How you doing, everybody? Welcome back to Staying Focused for Jesus. In this video, I want to reveal a few things to you. We're also going to set the foundation for some future sermons. Lord willing, I can make it to those sermons at a later date. But you've seen me make a few videos recently on America and stuff like that. And that's because I want you to have a proper understanding of what we are dealing with in regards to America during these last days. And I also want you to understand from a biblical perspective what is really going on in regards to this whole black and white thing. We see so many people going against each other, and we know the Bible prophesies about that, but we want to gain a deeper knowledge, a deeper wisdom, and a deeper understanding to the I guess you say the history of why Jesus said that in regards to how does it apply to today. So to understand what's going on today, you have to go back in history. You got to go back in history. And I tell you this all the time. You got to start reading. Some of you ask me, hey, where do you get this stuff from? Where do you find this stuff? Because I read, I research. And that's when you find your nuggets and stuff like that. Different things. The old saying goes, you want to hide something, you put it in the book. Or you want to hide something from a Negro, you put it in a book. For the most part, guess what? That's true. Because us Negroes do not like to read the way that we need to read. And that is a curse. Because God said that his people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. So I'm not going to be the stereotypical Negro and be able to be called ignorant and somebody hiding something from me in a book. But so we have the one drop rule, and this is something that was set up by America. It's not something that I'm making up. Some of you who are older, you probably know about this. You probably heard about this. For those of you who are study, you probably researched or came across it. But let's break it down for those who don't know, and let's make some connections on some things, and let's really see what Benjamin Franklin, one of the founding fathers, believed and supported, and why did he really release his slaves? So the one drop rule is a social and legal principle of racial classification that was historically prominent in the United States, asserting that any person with even one ancestor of sub-Saharan African ancestry, one drop of black blood, is considered Negro in historical terms, its implications of racial purity being that anyone unable to pass for white in the context of the U.S. racial hierarchy is assigned the lower status of being non-white or colored, proving already that America was set up for white supremacists. That's who it was set up for. When they set it up, that did not include who they considered to be mixed or not what they call the pure race, not pure white, because they considered that if you had one drop of black blood or Negro blood, you was considered a Negro. Now it's interesting because why is it that if a person, a so-called white person, has a drop of so-called black blood in them, then they are considered partially Negro, depending on how you want to get into percentages and stuff like that. Like Obama, President Obama, have what we call white and half what we call black, but he was considered black. Why is it not the other way around? Because there's really no such thing as what we call black. There's really no such thing as what we call white. Those are terms that were made up for many reasons. It was made up for many reasons, but one of the main reasons was to confuse people in regards to the scriptures, in regards to who the true people of the flesh are. So they set up this hierarchy, and the ones what you call the Aryan race or whatever, um, the ones who consider themselves pure white, a pure race, like Hitler was pushing for, they set up this hierarchy, right? And they have themselves at the top, everybody else is at the bottom. Now you may be saying, well, what about the poor whites and stuff like that? The poor whites, they use them to cause division amongst the poor whites and everybody else that is non-white or considered colored. So then the poor whites or the whites they deem is they ain't on a level. Again, they use them. They use the skin color to cause division. So the focus, so you can't really see what's going on, what they pulling when they don't really give a dang about the color folks or the poor white or you know who they would consider more mixed. Even if they look primarily what we call white, and they can go back and they can trace, or they got what they call black blood in them. They don't care for them. They do not care for them. They want a pure race. Benjamin Franklin wanted a pure race. He was a white supremacist. I'm gonna prove that to you. So here you have the lower people, us. we would be considered lower in their eyes. And you have this divide that they caused so that they can continue to gain power. And then the whites, who they don't really deal with, they carry this nationalistic pride about themselves. And this is exactly what we're seeing in America. When you have so many whites that are doing things that they ought not to be doing. Y'all know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to even go there. We already know. They're doing that based off of the system that they are in, because they have been taught this and been indoctrinated this to continue to cause this division. So ultimately, the whole system can break, so they can get the last world war, and then get complete power and control. That's what it's about. So if you are what we call a so-called white person watching this video, don't get caught up in that. You're going down a dangerous path, and you're being used. They're using you. You will never reach their level through them. And if you do, all they're gonna do is still use you. Don't worry about trying to reach their level. Reach the level that Christ has called you to reach. So it says this concept evolved over the course of the 19th century. So this is something recent. By who? America. And this is only really in America. Nobody else really does this. Now, has it passed around the world? Probably a little bit, because you know America passes everything, but this is American stuff. This concept evolved over the course of the 19th century and became codified into the law of some states in the early 20th century. It was associated with the principle of invisible blackness and is an example of hypodescent, the automatic assignment of children of a mixed union between different socio-economic or ethnic groups to the group with the lower status. Oh, he mixed, put him down here with the Negroes, non-white. He ain't white. They want a pure race. That's what white supremacy is about. The legal concept of the one-drop rule does not exist outside of the United States. It is defunct in the United States and was never codified into federal law. We know that's a lie. We know that's a lie. So that's why you gotta have discernment when you're reading these different articles and stuff, to discern what's true and what's false. Because they'll put a whole bunch of truth and then they'll say, yeah, we're not doing this anymore. In the same way, they'll say that slavery was abolished, but they don't tell you that slavery was never abolished. It was just put under another name. And the amendment says that, except for punishment of crime. But it doesn't say what the crime has to be. So is this true about this black blood and white blood? Let's see what the scriptures say. Let's see what the scriptures say. And have made, or Acts chapter 17, verse 26, and have made of one blood all nations of men, and have made of one blood all nations of men, for to dwell on all the face of the earth, and have determined the times before appointed and the bounds of their habitation. People arguing about skin color when we all pretty much what we call black. Different shades of the same dang color. Now I'm going to get into it a little bit later in regards to this pure, what they call pure white race. I'm gonna get into that. I don't even have my note up on it, but I'm gonna bring it up at the end. Because you do have, I'm getting ahead of myself, but I'm going to tell y'all. You do have people, not really people, but entities that are here, that are manifested in the flesh, that are pushing that and trying to establish something. But the truth is, they are not of this one blood. This is mankind. This is the original mankind coming from Adam and Eve right here. This is what he's talking about. He ain't talking about no hybrids. He ain't talking about no tares. So keep that in mind for later. Genesis chapter 3, verse 20. And Adam called his wife's name Eve, because she was the mother of all living. Genesis 9, verse 19. These are the three sons of Noah. And of them, of what? His three sons was the whole earth overspread. Some people talk about it. Noah was an albino, all this other stuff. Garbage. Garbage. Noah wasn't no dang albino. Y'all get that stuff from the Apocrypha and you just make stuff up. That's why I don't trust the Apocrypha. You got people, oh, the Apocrypha was missing from the scripture. I got a sermon coming on that. And after I do that sermon, don't talk to me about no Apocrypha. Because if a person would just simply do their research on the Apocrypha, they would see that it is not of God. How do you have a book that's supposed to be allegedly one of the missing books of the Bible, but then it says that Joseph was Jesus' father? Oh yeah, the Apocrypha teaches that. The Apocrypha also teaches witchcraft. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm getting weeks ahead of myself. For those of you who want to study it, though, go search it out. Oh, the Apocrypha says this. I don't care what the Apocrypha say in that aspect, because the Apocrypha is not of God. Now, can we use it for historical reference? Absolutely. But the Apocrypha contradicts the very word of God that we're reading right now. So how can it be a part of scriptures? How can it be holy when it talks about that Joseph was Jesus' father? Come on now. So we have democracy. And this stuff may not make sense right now, but when we tie it all together, it will. So democracy literally means rule by people. Rule by people. So people talk about that America is a democracy, that America is ruled by the people. There's a problem with that. There's a problem with that. I'm going to show you why. Because America is supposed to be a republic. So what is a republic? A government having a chief of state who is not a monarch and who in modern times is usually a president. A political unit such as a nation having such a form of government. A government in which supreme power resides in a body of citizens entitled to vote and is exercised by elected officers and representatives responsible to them and governing according to law. So we say that we have this great democracy, right, which is ruled by the people. So a democracy would be the fruit of a republic. Democracy would really come from a republic. So America was founded as a republic, and then it turned into a democracy, because a democracy is a form of a republic, really, when you dig deep into it. Now, what's the point I'm making about all this? Let's go back and see what it says. Republic is what? A government in which what? Supreme power resides in a body of citizens. Supreme power. You see, democracy is a little bit different. It's like a hybrid, or like a Nephilim type of thing that comes forth from a true republic. But a true republic is like, how do I say that? A real republic is pretty much the New World Order. That's what the republic. That's what it boils down to. It has to do with the New World Order. So let's read that one more time. A government in which supreme power resides. Supreme power resides with God. Supreme power resides in a body of citizens. Keep all this in mind, because it's going to matter. So what is a monarch? Because it says that it's not a monarch. Monarch means soul, chief. The prince or ruler of a nation who exercises all the powers of government without control, or who is vested with absolute sovereign power. An emperor, king, or prince invested with an unlimited power. A king or prince. So they say that we don't do that. Republic ain't that. Democracy isn't that. They don't want a monarch. They don't want a king. The government that we are a part of is a monarchy, with Christ being the king, the sole and chief ruler, the one who exercises all the powers of the government with control, because he has control over it. Christ is the one who is vested with absolute sovereign power. Christ is the emperor, he's the king, he's the prince. The Bible tells us this. So they don't want this. What they're saying is, when you get into, what they're saying is, when they want a republic, a democracy, a direct republic, or oligarchy, all these are pretty much forms of fruit of the same tree. They do not want this. They don't want a sole ruler. They don't want anybody ruling over them. But the crazy thing is this. America started as a republic. Now it has turned into a democracy. But all that is a setup that's leading them to a monarchy, the very thing that they don't want. Satan implemented, God allowed Satan to implement these different forms of government so the people could be deceived, because they don't really love the Lord. And it's going to end up leading them back to the very point that they didn't want, which was a monarchy. It's all a setup. A republic is a setup. A democracy is a setup. An oligarchy is a setup. A direct democracy is a setup. It's all communism, all that stuff, Bolshevism, all that stuff is a setup to lead the people back to the same point. Order out of chaos. A monarchy with one ruler. With one ruler. That's why the president can pretty much do anything he wants to. Because you got the Republic and you got the Republic of the United States, and then the corporation fighting amongst each other. But the Republic that's fighting, they want to implement NESARA. NESARA is the New World Order. But a lot of people don't realize that. So what is the Constitution? Because it said, did I read it? Yeah, no, I didn't read it. A king or prince, the supreme magistrate of a nation, whose powers are in some respects limited by the constitution of the government. So what is a constitution? By definition, the state of being, that form of being or peculiar structure and connection of parts which makes or characterizes a system or body. The frame or temper of mind, affections, or passions. Verse 4 gives us a real good definition. The established form of government in a state, kingdom, or country. So what is the constitution of heaven? Love. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and love your neighbor as you love yourself. That's the constitution of heaven. The constitution of the heavenlies is that, what we just said. The government that is established in the kingdom of God, in the kingdom of heaven, in his country, the country that we seek, right, is a government, the government of love. A system of fundamental rules. What's the fundamental rules of being a Christian? We just said it, the 2 commandments. 2 greatest commandments. So let's go to the scriptures. And let's prove that. Let's prove that God has a monarchy. Let me make sure I read everything. I want to make sure I read everything that I wanted to read. Okay, we good. Psalms 82, verse number 1. God standeth in the congregation of the mighty. He judgeth among the gods. Where is he at? He's standing in the congregation of the mighty. 1 Kings chapter 22, verses 19 through 23. And he said, Hear thou therefore the word of the Lord. I saw the Lord sitting on his throne, and all the hosts of heaven standing by him on his right hand and on his left. They were all around the Lord. And the Lord said, Who shall persuade Ahab, that he may go up and fall at Ramoth Gilead? And one said, On this manner, and another said, On that manner. So God was seeking counsel of his heavenly host, of the angels. But he is the monarch. He's the supreme ruler. He has supreme power. So he's asking them this question: Who's going to help to get this prophecy fulfilled? My word fulfilled. And there came forth a spirit and stood before the Lord and said, I will persuade him. And the Lord said unto him, Wherewith? And he said, I will go forth, and I will be a lying spirit in the mouth of all his prophets. And he said, Thou shalt persuade him, and prevail also. Go forth and do so. So you have all these angels standing around, and they're giving their counsel to the Lord, because the Lord is allowing it. And then this one steps forth. So of course they probably, I ain't gonna say arguing, but they were discussing how they were going to do it. And then this one comes forth. He comes out the midst of all the rest of them. And everybody's like looking at him. And then he told the Lord how he was going to do it. The Lord allowed him to do it because that's what he wanted to do. He said, you want to go forth and be a lying spirit, then you go do it. So that shows you that even on the angels, I mean, we know that, but some people don't. Angels have free will. Because the Lord allowed him to be a lying spirit. We know that an angel of the Lord ain't going to sit there and be lying. So we know what type of spirit this really was. That God was allowing right here at this time. And that goes back to the, I believe, to the book of Job. To the book of Job, where it talks about the angels, the sons of God, they came and presented themselves before the Lord. It ties in with that. Not that event specifically, but it ties in with that. So the Lord told him that he was going to, he said, you were going to persuade him. Then in verse 23, it says, Now therefore, behold, the Lord hath put a lying spirit in the mouth of all these thy prophets, and the Lord hath spoken evil concerning thee. The Lord allowed it to happen. The Lord's word is final authority, not the lying spirit. That's why I said that the Lord hath put a lying spirit, because the Lord put his stamp of approval to allow this spirit to do that. But who's sitting on the throne as a king in this monarchy? The Lord. Now, as I was telling you, the whole republic and democracy and whatever else, all it's going to do is lead up to, the whole point is to cause confusion and to lead people up to a democracy. To a monarchy. Monarchy with Satan ruling it. So let's prove that from the scriptures. Because people are so hell bent on a democracy. When their democracy is going to fall, it's going to fall bad too. And they're going to fall right into the trap. So we're in the book of Revelation, chapter 13. And we want to read verses 1 through 8. And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority. And I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed. And all the world wondered after the beast. And they worshipped the dragon which gave power unto the beast. And they worshipped the beast, saying, Who is like unto the beast, who is able to make war with him? And there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies. And power was given unto him to continue 42 months. What did the people say in verse number 4? Who is like unto the beast, who is able to make war with him? We can't defeat him. He's too powerful. And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle and them that dwell in heaven. And it was given unto him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. And power was given him over all kindreds and tongues and nations. There go your monarchy right there. And all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. There go your monarchy right there. Now, what type of beast is this? Revelation 9:11. And they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue, we can't speak English, is Abaddon. But in the Greek tongue, we can't speak English, had his name Apollyon. So the Bible itself gives 2 different languages, 2 different meanings of the same angel. Abaddon, same angel. Apollyon, same angel. Stop with the garbage about you can't say Jesus in English. Jesus, same Jesus. As long as it's the same Jesus of the scriptures, then you good. Hebrew, whatever it is in Hebrew, you want to call his name Hebrew, but all that garbage about his name ain't Jesus and everything, you on a broad path. Because the Bible right here is cutting you up. The Bible itself speaks about the different languages. And even over the head of Jesus, the inscription was written in different languages. So you need to chill out. But they had a king, right? A king, that's a monarchy. We know that Satan is going to rule over the whole world. That's a monarchy. So this whole democracy and all these other things, it's not going to last. It's a setup. It's a setup. So then we have, what is NESARA? What is NESARA? Some of you are familiar with this and some of you are not. I have videos on this if you want to check it out. I highly recommend that you do because you need to check it out. It got some good stuff the Lord gave me in regards to understanding what the New World Order is about, really. It goes into more detail. But this is what it's really called, NESARA. New World Order is NESARA or GESARA, or in modern terms, for those who are not familiar with this, the global reset. It's all the same thing, people. Now, you have Steve Beko, and Steve Beko is channeling this message from this spirit. Now, this is a representation of who he said the spirit is. And Saint Germain is Satan. He is Satan. So it says, since NESARA has been mentioned several times recently, please allow me to give a short summary of what NESARA comprises. The acronym NESARA stands for National Economic Security and Reformation Act. The act was passed by the American Congress in the year 2000 and never proclaimed, for reasons we will touch upon shortly. So this is a guy that is a channeler. He's channeling the spirit, giving this message. Now, I want y'all to pay attention to this stuff because you got to know these things. As a spiritually directed financial program, for the love of money is the root of all evil. NESARA is coming from spiritual entities that are directing this. It's coming from spiritual entities. As a spiritually directed financial program. See, they're using money, but they ain't got nothing to do with the money. But they know that's how they can get people. They're gonna use the money to get the people to really fall down into what they really want them to be into, which is the Luciferian doctrine. So again, as a spiritually directed financial program, it traces back to the work of Saint Germain and 3 other ascended masters. Some of y'all know about this stuff because you studied it. You know who these ascended masters are, for real. Saint Germain is Satan. His name is Satan. His real name is Satan. Saint Germain is Satan. Satan has this money that he's going to release when the New World Order is brought into play. That work began in the 15th century, way before that, and was designed to provide a new economic system, there go your New World Order right there, for the world during the present time of transition, because they are going through the transition period for the golden age of Gaia. You hear about all that. You hear about that. The Divine Mother, Mother Earth worship, and all this other stuff. This is what it is right here. They're using that to indoctrinate, to baptize people into Luciferianism, worshiping Lucifer as God, worshiping Satan as God, and ultimately exalting themselves and saying that they could be God. So Sheldon Idol's spiritual hierarchy and galactic federation, you know, all this stuff sounds crazy, but this stuff is real, describes the master's work and its development over the centuries. I cite that passage at length. This time will be heralded by an infusion of great abundance. You see how they say it? You see how they say it? This prosperity. You ever wonder why we got such a push for the prosperity gospel? Why is the prosperity gospel just being pushed and pushed and pushed so recently, right? That's because it's setting the people up for this. You have to condition the people's mind. You have to plant the seeds. So when this release of money does come, the people are really going to think that this is Jesus Christ that has done this. Because their minds are already conditioned to reap. They're looking for this prosperity. That this is what God wants you to have. This is what the gospel is about. He wants you to be rich and this and that, this and that. They're looking for a financial breakthrough. So when the Antichrist steps on the scene and releases this money through NESARA, he's going to do it through law. Because NESARA is going to be a law that's going to be implemented. He's going to release these funds to all the people around the world when he's not really releasing it. People are going to think that they live in a good life, but they're really not going to be. And so that's why you had this prosperity gospel. It's setting up for this. The so-called pastors are not going to teach you this stuff in the church buildings because they don't know, because they ain't got the Spirit of God to even reveal it to them. This prosperity will be due largely to the endurance of our earthly allies and the brilliant strategies set in motion many centuries ago by the ascended masters, Count Saint Germain. I ain't finna call him that. Talking about some capital master, ain't no capital in him, ain't no master. He a master, but he ain't the master. Hilarion, Seraphis Bey, and Saint. I can't call him that. I'm gonna say Paul the Venetian. These unholy beings were able to bring to this realm a financial and monetary plan whose secret purpose is to enable great abundance to rain down at the appropriate time. Although Germain is ultimately responsible for its success, each of the ascended masters we have mentioned has played a significant role in its present day preparation. So, what happens under NESARA? And I've covered this before, but I need to cover it again because a lot of people don't know about this. NESARA is the New World Order. It is. It is. I'm showing you. Watch. So what happens under NESARA? Zeroes out all credit card, mortgage, and other bank debt due to illegal banking. You got this whole fuss about this illegal banking, everything the banks are doing, right? And government activities that created and precipitated this debt, meaning that the debt that we are under is illegal. That's what they're saying. This is the Federal Reserve worst nightmare, a jubilee or a forgiveness of debt. What is the jubilee that we have? The jubilee that we have is a spiritual jubilee. First, forgiveness of debt is what? The forgiveness of sin. The debt that we owe is sin. But you see how they're twisting it? They're making it physical. They're making it physical. They're playing off the lust of the people's flesh. It abolishes the income tax, abolishes the IRS. Employees of the IRS will be transferred into the U.S. Treasury National Sales Tax area. Now, is it going to be exactly like this? No, but this is the core of it. Creates a 14% flat rate non-essential new item only sales tax revenue for the government. In other words, food and medicine will not be taxed, nor will use items such as old homes. Increases benefits to senior citizens. They got something for everybody. The benefits that they are increasing is the medicine, the personalized medicine. The healthcare system plays a major part in what we call the mark of the beast, because it's really through the healthcare system that they're going to really implement the mark of the beast. It's going to be through the healthcare system, and the merging of the healthcare system in this time to come with the new technology that they're going to roll out. This whole chip and all that other stuff, that's child's play, y'all. That's child's play. I got some stuff I can show y'all. You be like, oh, that's crazy. Number 6, returns constitutional law, not maritime law, to all courts in legal matters. We're under maritime law right now. Reinstates the original title of nobility amendment. This clause reads, and some of y'all know about this, meaning that these people who are claiming to be in positions of power, these lawyers and stuff, they're not legit. They are not legit. So we go down to this part. It says, establishes new presidential and congressional elections within 120 days after NESARA's announcement. Hold new elections. Interesting, I'm watching a show called The Designated Survivor. And that show has so much truth. And it's set it's set in the end times, where there's this great attack on America. The greatest attack since 9/11, where they blow up the Capitol building, and pretty much the whole cabinet, president, everybody dies except one dude. He ends up becoming vice president, but they end up taking him out too. He ended up getting killed. But could that possibly be what happens? Some catastrophic event that brings in a new world order, and then they have to establish a new presidential and congressional elections within 120 days? Is that, hey, I'm just saying. The interim government will cancel all national emergencies and return us back to constitutional base law and legal system. Now you got to read between the lines. The interim government, like in the movie Designated Survivor, they got an interim government. He has to build the government back up. And then you have this one lady that's in there. They call her, I forgot what they say exactly, but she's part of the old regime, and they want her out to bring all new heads, all young heads, because the new Congress, they're all younger people. You know why they're younger? Because they have already been indoctrinated to the ways that that the people who put them there wanted them to be. You got to bring down the old regime to bring in the new, because the new regime has already been conditioned, already been indoctrinated with the doctrine of Luciferianism. So when you put them in that position of government, then they're going to make decisions based off of them being indoctrinated into the Luciferian doctrine. Now you got to read between the lines, like I was telling you. Look, the interim government will cancel all national emergencies. So there has to be national emergencies going on. Martial law. There has to be national emergencies going on for them to cancel them. The government had to fall for there to be an interim government in the first place, and return us back to constitutional-based law and legal system. So the whole point of bringing the whole system down is to bring in this alleged constitutional-based law and legal system, to bring in the republic, which is what the United States is based off of, to lead up to the monarchy, the monarch system, with Satan ruling. Order out of chaos. I've covered this stuff years ago, probably a year or two ago. And it's just interesting how the stuff that we're reading is going on right now. More and more and more and more. Number 3, monitors elections and prevents illegal election activities of special interest groups. This that I'm reading is not anything new. I've been did a sermon on this. So how is it that they can say this right here, and you have that very thing going on with all these scandals dealing with the election, showing you that this document, these things they're saying about NESARA, they are true. And I've proven 100% in my other videos that NESARA is the new world order. Creates a new U.S. Treasury rainbow currency, which is actually backed by gold, silver, and platinum precious metals. Isn't that what they've been trying to do? Isn't that what you hear? Isn't that what you see on YouTube with people talking about that and stuff in regard to the global reset? Thus ending the bankruptcy of the United States initiated by Franklin Roosevelt in 1933 and the instigation of the Federal Reserve System. Forbids the sale of American birth certificate records as chattel, however you want to say it, property bonds by the U.S. Department of Transportation. You know that your birth certificate, you didn't know your birth certificate was a bond? That's how they move you around. They move you around on the stock market. That's how they move you around. So before we go any further, they talked about maritime law, right? They bring back constitutional law, and then they do away with the maritime law. So what is maritime law? Because some of you have heard this, some of you have researched some of this stuff, and you understand that we are under maritime law right now. So maritime law is a collection of laws and agreements that govern behavior and activities on the seas. We are being governed by laws of the sea, and it gets deeper than that, but I can't go into it in this video completely. It's for another video, and there are videos out there that talk about it. The area of law governs how people interact and do business on the waters of the world. Think about what the waters in the sea represent in the Bible. Also called admiralty law, maritime law primarily governs activities on international waters. Then it goes on and talks a little bit more about it. So I just want y'all to get a little bit of understanding about that, so you won't be too ignorant on certain things. So we have Executive Order 11110 that was issued by President John F. Kennedy on June 4th, 1963. Because if this is the case, then we should be able to pretty much prove this. We should be able to pretty much prove this. This executive order amended Executive Order 10289, dated September 17th, 1951, by delegating to the Secretary of the Treasury the President's authority to issue silver certificates under the Thomas Amendment of the Agricultural Adjustment Act. There go your connection right there. Why would this Agricultural Adjustment Act be tied in with this money being backed by gold, by precious metals? What's the connection, you say? Because when you read about NESARA, it was some farmers that really popped it off, they say. The farmers had sued the government, and the government didn't pay them and stuff. It's a whole backstory to it. But there's a connection with it. You just got to do your research. Or you can go watch the other videos I did on it. So it says, as amended by the Gold Reserve Act, the order allowed the Secretary to issue silver certificates if any were needed during the transition period under President Kennedy's plan to eliminate silver certificates and use Federal Reserve notes. Now you may be saying, well, he was going to use the Federal Reserve notes. You got to read a little bit more. On November 28, 1961, President Kennedy halted sales of silver by the Treasury Department. Increasing demand for silver as an industrial metal had led to an increase in the market price of silver above the United States government's fixed price. This led to a decline in the government's excess silver reserves by over 80% during 1961. Kennedy also called upon Congress to phase out silver certificates in favor of Federal Reserve notes, which, according to the Associated Press at that time, were still backed by gold. You see, what he was doing, he was implementing this money at the time. It was backed by gold. He was trying to do some stuff that he got it in above his head. And that's why they took him out. That's the real reason. That's the real reason. It wasn't time. It wasn't time. He played his course. So there go your connection right there. And we know about the there you go, JFK assassination theory. It's not a theory. It's been proven. This is a big part of the reason why they really killed him. Because that ties in directly with the New World Order, which is what we read right here. Creates a new U.S. Treasury rainbow currency, which is actually backed by gold, silver, and platinum precious metals. Then it talks about, it says, we read that, but let's read it again. Forbids the sale of American birth certificate records as chattel, I pronounce it different sometimes. Y'all roll with me. Property bonds by the U.S. Department of Transportation. That's people. Is there a scripture to confirm that? Can we prove it from the scriptures? Absolutely. In reference to Mystery Babylon. Revelation 18, verse 13. And cinnamon and odors, talking about everything that Mystery Babylon trades and sells. And cinnamon and odors and ointments and frankincense and wine and oil and fine flour and wheat and beasts and sheep and horses and chariots and slaves and souls of men. Your birth certificate is only a representation of you. That's why you can't get hardly, I don't know, any documents, any real documents you can get without having your birth certificate. I wonder why that is. So then it says initiates new U.S. Treasury bank system in alignment with constitutional law. So they can have a whole new banking system because it's all going to be digital. And just thinking about it, this new U.S. Treasury rainbow currency is probably going to be digital too. Not probably, but it is. It is going to be digital. Now, how they roll it out at first, are they going to roll it out with actual currency like we have now, and then implement the complete digital system? You know, that's a possibility, but I don't know completely. But we know that they are going toward trying to make everything digital. We do know that. So we know that the money is going to be digital. So just thinking about that, this rainbow currency is ultimately going to be digital. Number 7, eliminates the Federal Reserve System during the transition period. The Federal Reserve will be allowed to operate side by side of the U.S. Treasury for 1 year in order to remove all Federal Reserve notes from the money supply. Restores financial privacy, retrains all judges and attorneys in constitutional law. That's interesting because you got all this craziness going on. We know what's happening in the streets with the police officers and unarmed black men. So that's very interesting. You got all these corrupt judges that don't understand constitutional law. They're just breaking it, doing what they want to. Ceases all aggressive U.S. government military actions worldwide. Number 11, establishes a platform for the United States to lead the world towards peace. There you go right there, y'all. NESARA is the new world order. This is not of God. When Christ comes to establish worldwide peace, it's going to be him doing it, not through the United States. NESARA, GESARA, the global reset is the new world order. Number 12, releases enormous sums of money for a multitude of humanitarian purposes. There you go, right there. That's how he gonna get majority of the people. He gonna release this money under Saint Germain's trust, Lucifer's trust, Satan's trust. Satan got all this money. The book of Ezekiel even talks about that. That's how he gonna get them. Now you got a deeper meaning of what it actually means when it says, "For the love of money is the root of all evil." What does it profit a man if he gain the whole world but sell his soul, lose his soul? People will sell their soul for money. That's what they're gonna sell it. They're gonna literally sell their soul for money. 13, enables the release of over 6,000 patents of suppressed technologies that are being withheld from the public under the guise of national security, including free energy devices, anti-gravity, and sonic healing machines. I've seen all that, so I know this is true. That's how I know this document. This is real. I mean, you ain't got to try to not to convince me. I'm convinced because I've looked at the evidence. I'm just going through it to touch bases for those who don't know about this. So I'll be watching all type of stuff. I know about this technology that they got, and some of you do too. Free energy, we know about that. Anti-gravity devices, we know about that. That's what they use with the what they call the UFOs. They are anti-gravity devices. The government got the technology from fallen angels. So some of the UFOs you see, they are what we call real UFOs, and some of them is military crafts that are made from the technology that they got from the fallen angels. Sonic healing machines, I made videos about that back a while back, where they can actually heal you with light. They call it light, like light technology, LIGHT. They can heal you with light. They can go in, they can like vibrate cancer cells away and stuff like that. Which that's what they talk about, sonic healing machines, like vibration and stuff. But they also have machines that they can heal different things, of the body with light technology. And they put it in the TV shows and the movies. We'd be like, oh, that's pretty cool. Not realizing that that stuff they putting in the movies and TV shows, it's real. It's real. They show the technology in the movies. So we go forward, and we have Benjamin Franklin, a quote from Benjamin Franklin. I found it very, very interesting, proving even more that democracy and all these different things, it's a setup. It's a setup. People are up in arms. People hated me. They hate those of us who say we don't vote, when they're so blind that they don't even know what's going on. But hey, it's that's what they want. God gonna give them what they want. Democracy is two wolves and a lamb voting on what to have for lunch. It's Benjamin Franklin saying that. Liberty is a well-armed lamb contesting the vote. Benjamin Franklin did not believe in a democracy. He did not support a democracy. He did not, the power was not supposed to be amongst the people. It's supposed to be amongst them, the elite, and the following generations after that, to rule over everybody else. He didn't want nothing to do with no democracy, and none of the founding fathers did. Founding fathers of America did. So, what are y'all reading? What are y'all studying? You're supporting a democracy when the very people who are known as the founding fathers, they didn't even want anything to do with a democracy. There's tons and tons of evidence to support that. That's why I did the videos I did before. So, Franklin, I think I'm gonna hit it myself. We want to get a little background on him. I know y'all know about him, but let's get a little background. Benjamin Franklin was an American polymath and one of the founding fathers of the United States. Franklin was a leading author, printer, political theorist, politician, Freemason, postmaster, scientist, inventor, humorist, civil activist, statesman, and diplomat. He talks about his inventions, which he didn't really invent that stuff. He didn't invent electricity and the lightning rod. He didn't invent that. He stole it. So we jump down now to, I want to go to the part where it talks about slavery. Slavery, let me see. Let's go to the Declaration of Independence first. We know about all this, but let's just get a rehash. Bear with me. By the time Franklin arrived in Philadelphia on May 5th, 1776, I want you to keep that date in mind. 1776, after his second mission to Great Britain, the American Revolution had begun, with fighting between colonials and British at Lexington and Concord. So it jumps down and says, in June 1776, he was appointed a member of the Committee of Five that drafted the Declaration of Independence. Although he was temporarily disabled by gout and unable to attend most meetings of the committee, Franklin made several small but important changes to the draft sent to him by Thomas Jefferson. So just basic stuff that we know. Basic stuff, right? Now we know about 1776. You may say this all doesn't mean nothing to me, but it will. Let's jump down to slavery and see his views on slavery. Franklin owned as many as 7 slaves, 2 males, who worked in his household and his shop. Franklin posted paid ads for the sale of slaves and for the capture of runaway slaves, and allowed the sale of slaves in his general store. I thought all men were created equal. Franklin profited, and let me add something. The Bible doesn't even teach that. The Bible does not even teach that. I got a sermon coming on that too. The Bible does not teach that. Before you jump on me, hold your horses. Oh, how can you say that all men are not created equal? Give me a chance when the time comes. If you don't, then you can go study it out for yourself and see what the Bible says. But Franklin profited from both the international and domestic slave trade, even criticizing slaves who had run off to join the British army during the colonial wars of the 1740s and 1750s. Franklin, however, later became a cautious abolitionist and became an outspoken critic of landed gentry slavery. In 1758, Franklin advocated the opening of a school for the education of black slaves in Philadelphia. This is what ultimately happened. They did not want the slaves coming over here. They did not want the slaves coming over here. He had slaves, but then he changed his mind. He said, well, the slaves I got, we can teach them. We can free them, and then we can, in essence, still have them enslaved by indoctrination. And then we can use them to spread what we want to be spread. That's what was really going on. Franklin took 2 slaves to England with him, Peter and King. And King left his service there in 1756. In 1758, he was working for a lady in Suffolk. Whether Franklin could have compelled King's return is open to doubt in the light of the earlier English common law decisions and the subsequent case of Shanley versus Harvey, but in fact he did not do so. After returning from England in 1762, look at these dates: 1756, 1758, 1762. This was before the Declaration of Independence. After returning from England in 1762, Franklin became more anti-slavery. So you're probably saying, yeah, it's a good thing, it's a good thing. But you got to ask yourself, what was his reasoning? I'm going to show you what his reasoning was. By 1770, Franklin had freed his slaves and attacked the system of slavery and the international slave trade. Franklin, however, refused to publicly debate the issue of slavery at the 1787 Constitutional Convention. They didn't really want to get rid of the slaves. Franklin tended to take both sides of the issue of slavery, never fully divesting himself from the institution. He was playing both sides because he knew that slavery benefited him, but he was more for the cause of what he stood for, which was white supremacy. I'm going to show you that. I'm going to prove it from his own writings. In his later years, as Congress was forced to deal with the issue of slavery, Franklin wrote several essays that stressed the importance of the abolition of slavery and of the integration of blacks into American society. So you may be saying, see, that's a good thing. He was for the abolition of slavery, not in the way that you think about it. Or you say it's a good thing. He wanted blacks to be integrated into American society. He wanted them to be integrated into American society so that the ones that were already that used to be slaves and that were already in America could be used. He didn't want them. He didn't want the ones that were already there to go back, because then they would let the other ones know what was going on, and then rise up against them. It was all for politics, nothing to do with, yeah, you know what I'm saying, I should really let them go because I love them, you know. It nothing to do with that. Nothing. So the quotation, all men are created equal, has been called an immortal declaration, and perhaps the single phrase of the American Revolutionary period with the greatest continuing importance. So this all men are created equal is the greatest continuing importance. But we got to get to the core of what they really believe. Thomas Jefferson first used the phrase in the U.S. Declaration of Independence, which he penned in 1776 during the beginning of the American Revolution. It was thereafter quoted and incorporated into speeches by a wide array of substantial figures in American political and social life in the United States. The final form of the phrase was stylized by Benjamin Franklin. So it says, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And while they wrote this, they still had slaves. Now, don't get it twisted and say, and you think that because they were supposedly for the abolition of slavery, that they got rid of the slaves. Because remember, we read that he was pretty much torn between it. It was all business. So when they said that all men are created equal, that did not include those who they thought were inferior, which would include the slaves. That's why they say, oh yeah, we keep the slaves, we free them, we teach them what we want them to know. Then in essence, they become our slaves mentally. And then they will go forth and they will produce children, and then they will teach their children the same thing that we taught them. And then they will be indoctrinated to the teachings of Luciferianism, because the founding fathers, they were Luciferians. So according to them, we don't get the pursuit of we don't get life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We don't get that. We don't get that. We have to follow them. We can't go to the Creator. They are our Creator. That's what they believe. That they are the master race. So we have Thomas Jefferson and slavery. In U.S. history, the relationship between Thomas Jefferson and slavery was a complex one, and that Jefferson worked to gradually end the practice of slavery while himself owning hundreds of African American slaves throughout his adult life. There was a reason why they were trying to gradually end it. It had nothing to do with what you think. Nothing to do with what you think. Jefferson's position on slavery has been extensively studied and debated by his biographers and by scholars of slavery. Starting in 1767, at age 24, Jefferson inherited 5,000 acres of land and 52 slaves by his father's will. In 1786, Jefferson began construction of his Monticello plantation. Through his marriage to Martha Wales in 1772, an inheritance from his father-in-law John Wales. In 1773, Jefferson inherited 2 plantations and 135 slaves. By 1776, by the time of the signing of the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, Jefferson was one of the largest planters in Virginia. I thought they wanted to do away with slavery. However, the value of his property, land and slaves, was increasingly offset by his growing debts. So even these folks were in debt, which made it very difficult to free his slaves and thereby lose them as assets. In his writings on American grievances justifying the Revolution, he attacked the British for sponsoring the slave trade to the colonies. These dudes are just straight up hypocrites. In 1778, with Jefferson's leadership, slave importation was banned in Virginia, one of the first jurisdictions worldwide to do so. Jefferson was a lifelong advocate of ending the trade, and as president led the effort to criminalize the international slave trade that passed Congress, and he signed in 1807, shortly before Britain passed a similar law. All they did was what we call slavery by another name. They did not want the blacks to rile up. That's what they had to deal with. They did not want the blacks to rise up. In 1779, as a practical solution to end slavery, Jefferson supported gradual emancipation, training, and colonization of African American slaves rather than unconditional manumission. This is what it had to boil down to. They didn't want any more slaves coming over here. And I'm a blow the roof off of it and show you why. They didn't want any more slaves coming over here. But they wanted the slaves that they did have, they wanted to emancipate them, that's not freedom. That's not being free from your master. They wanted to train them. That's what's going on today. And they didn't want to colonize them into the ways and teachings and beliefs of what they believed. They wanted to create some good old patriots. And look, they didn't want to just release them. Why? Believing that releasing unprepared slaves with no place to go and no means to support themselves would only bring them misfortune. Bring who misfortune? Them. Because why? They were going to rise up. In 1784, Jefferson proposed federal legislation banning slavery in the new territories of the North and South after 1800, which failed to pass Congress by one vote. In his notes on the state of Virginia, I was trying to emphasize that, but I was adding it together when that's a title. Published in 1785, Jefferson expressed the beliefs that slavery corrupted both masters and slaves alike. You say, okay, that sounds good. He also said it supported colonization of free slaves, suspected that African Americans were inferior in intelligence. So in his notes on the state of Virginia, published in 1785, Jefferson expressed the beliefs that all these things, which include that he suspected that African Americans were inferior in intelligence. Now, how could African Americans be inferior in intelligence in which the very basis of the knowledge that these founding fathers had, they got it from Egypt, they got it from Africa. And you can trace it back. They got it from Africa. They got it ultimately from Nimrod. And we know who Nimrod got it from, and we know who he got it from. Satan manipulated the knowledge that God had given him for his own gain. So, this dude was so full of himself that he didn't even understand what was really going on. So then he says, and that emancipating large numbers of slaves made slave uprisings more likely. That's why they wanted to colonize them. Let's just bring them in and teach them what we want to teach them. Because if they rise up, then they're going to kill us. They was afraid of that. Why? Because this dude was a white supremacist. But then look what he did. In 1794 and 1796, Jefferson manumitted by deed 2 of his male slaves. They had been trained and were qualified to hold employment. So he trained them up the way he wanted to train them up. So these dudes were not who you think they were. Now let's prove this stuff. Let's prove this stuff. So this is observations concerning the increase of mankind. Think about depopulation. Benjamin Franklin was concerned with the increase of population. Just like Bill Gates. Because Bill Gates is a white supremacist. He is. So let's just read this first part so we just get a little context about what's going on. This is an essay by Benjamin Franklin. The immediate occasion for writing this essay, according to Van Doren, was the British Iron Act of 1750, which prohibited the erection of additional slitting and rolling mills, plating forges, and steel furnaces in the American colonies. While English iron masters rejoiced in the protection the law afforded them, A few far-sighted Britons and most Americans appreciated that the act would curb colonial growth at just the moment when Britain and France were engaged in a climatic struggle for possession of North America. So he wrote this in 1751. Franklin wrote the essay in 1751, and the following spring he sent a copy to Peter Collison and Richard Jackson, who were greatly entertained by it. And Jackson eventually sent Franklin a full criticism of it. Collison hoped it would be published. I don't find anyone has hit it off so well. And Dr. John Perkins of Boston, who also received the copy, judged it as such an informing piece that it should be read and well considered by every Englishman who wished well to his country. So this document, this essay, had much clout amongst those people who were in that circle. They said everybody needs to read this. All Englishmen need to read this. So if we jump down to number 5, section 5 of his essay, it says Europe is generally full settled with husbandmen, manufacturers, and etc., and therefore cannot now much increase in people. America is chiefly occupied by Indians, who subsist mostly by hunting, but as the hunter of all men requires the greatest quantity of land from whence to draw his substance, the husbandman subsisting on much less, the gardener on still less, and the manufacturer requiring least of all. So he pretty much saying like, hey, they're hunters and they require more land, so we trying to establish this these manufacturers. Benjamin Franklin, he wanted to do the manufacturing. He didn't really want to use slaves, and I'm gonna get to it why he didn't want to use slaves anymore. So the Europeans found America as fully settled as it well could be by hunters, by the Indians. So we know these things. Yet these, having large tracts, were easily prevailed on to part with portions of territory to the newcomers, who did not much interfere with the natives in hunting, and furnished them with many things they wanted. But we know how that turned out. So we're gonna jump down to number 6 right here. It says, land being thus plenty in America, and so cheap as that a laboring man that understands husbandry can in a short time save money enough to purchase a piece of new land sufficient for a plantation. So land was cheap back in the day. I wonder why it's so expensive now. Because they know that majority cannot afford it. Majority cannot afford it. That's why they jack the prices up, because they did what they need to do now. So they just jack the prices up, because they know when the prices are jacked up, when you think something is expensive, it's not really expensive. It just look expensive to us because we can't afford half the stuff. But when they set those prices, that's dirt to them. It's dirt. You think about a $100,000 house, a $200,000 house. That ain't nothing to these people. They got plenty of money, and all they do is write it off and get the money right back. And then they ain't working for it anyway. They got the slaves working for it. Slavery is still going on. So it says, whereon he may subsist a family such are not afraid to marry. For if they even look far enough forward to consider how their children, when grown up, are to be provided for, they see that more land is to be had at rates equally easy, all circumstances considered. What do you mean all circumstances considered? Because you still had Indians, so what do you mean all circumstances? So you tell me you can still get the land at easy rates, all circumstances considered. You can get the land at easy rates for a cheap price. Even with the hunters, they call it the hunters, the Indians, you can still get it. That will be included in the all circumstances to be considered. No matter what, we can get it for you. So we want to jump down to section number 8. But notwithstanding this increase, so vast is the territory of North America that it will require many ages to settle it fully. So he wanted, and the founding fathers, they wanted America to be populated by that pure race, pure white race. And that's going to come out his own mouth, as you're going to see. They didn't want it to be populated by mixed people. They didn't want it to be populated by slaves. They wanted the slaves out. They didn't want no more slaves coming over here. So it continues on and says, until it is fully settled, labor will never be cheap here, where no man continues long a laborer for others, but gets a plantation of his own. No man continues long a journeyman to a trade, but goes among those new settlers, and sets up for himself in company. I think I said in coal, or I said etc. before, but I mean in company. Hence labor is no cheaper now in Pennsylvania than it was 30 years ago, though so many thousand laboring people have been imported. So this was his concern. I want, you know what I'm saying? I want to make my money. I need cheap labor, but the labor price was not going down, even though more people were coming in. So we're going to read number 9 too. The danger, therefore, of these colonies interfering with their mother country in trades that depend on labor, manufacturers, and company is too remote to require the attention of Great Britain. But in proportion to the increase of the colonies, a vast demand is growing for British manufacturers, a glorious market wholly in the power of Britain, in which foreigners cannot interfere, which will increase in a short time even beyond her power of supplying, though her whole trade should be to her colonies. Therefore, Britain should not too much restrain manufacturers in her colonies. So don't hold back the manufacturing. Ultimately, they got it, and then we have what we call the Industrial Revolution that brought forth this cheap labor, and a whole bunch of people end up really losing their jobs. A wise and good mother will not do it. To distress is to weaken, and weakening the children weakens the whole family. So we jump down to section number 12, and it says, "'Tis an ill-grounded opinion that by the labor of slaves, America may possibly vie in cheapness of manufactures with Britain." So this is why he was trying to abolish slavery. He wanted the slaves out. They wanted them out because it was messing with their money. The slaves were costing them more money than it was that they were. Then if they had the whole manufacturing thing going on, they would have made more money. They would have had a bigger return on their investment. Then he even says it. The labor of slaves can never be so cheap here as the labor of working men is in Britain. He didn't want the typical slavery setup. He wanted the factories with men working in it. That's ultimately what happened. That's ultimately what happened. You got the working class. Anyone may compute it. Interest of money is in the colonies from 6 to 10%. Slaves, one with another cost, 30 sterlings per head. Reckon then the interest of the first purchase of a slave, the insurance or resique of his life, his clothing and diet, expenses in his sickness and loss of time, lost by his neglect of business. Neglect is natural to the man who is not to be benefited by his own care or diligence. Expense of a driver to keep him at work, and his pilfering from time to time. Almost every slave being by nature a thief. This is what they thought about. This is what he thought about blacks. That we're naturally thieves. This is white supremacy at its core. So he was saying that, do the math, and keeping of the slaves, it costs too much compared to if you just have these factories set up with people working in them. They even had insurance on us. Crazy. Then it continues on and says, and compare the whole amount with the wages of a manufacturer of iron or wool in England. You will see that the labor is much cheaper there than it ever can be by Negroes here. So they knew who we were. Why then will Americans purchase slaves? So he said, why y'all want to keep on doing this? Then he answers it. Because slaves may be kept as long as a man pleases or has occasion for their labor, while hired men are continually leaving their master, often in the midst of his business and setting up for themselves. So they kept on getting the slaves because they could not control the regular labor. They couldn't control them, not right then, but they ended up doing it. And so now you have the system that we are in now. So that's why they wanted to keep on bringing the slaves in, because they were like, the slaves are easy turnover. They die, we just get another one. They didn't care. So we jump down to 13. We're going to read part 1 and part 6. As the increase of people depends on the encouragement of marriages, the following things must diminish a nation. The being conquered, for the conquerors will engross as many offices and exact as much tribute or profit on the labor of the conquered. Taxes. That's why taxes keep on increasing everything, to keep the people down. So when a land is conquered, the conquerors do what? They set themselves up in positions of power so they can set up a system of tribute, taxes on the people that labor, as will maintain them in their new establishment, and this diminishing of the substance of the natives discourages their marriages, and so gradually diminishes them while the foreigners increase. So he was saying this is a problem because the foreigners are increasing in the land that he had set up for him and his people. So we jump down to number 6, right? Where is that? Okay, right here. The introduction of slaves. So he says that this diminishes a nation, right? The introduction of slaves. Let's go back up so we can get the context. As the increase of people depends on the encouragement of marriages, the following things must diminish a nation. These things diminish a nation. So he says the introduction of slaves diminishes a nation. Why? The Negroes brought into the English sugar islands have greatly diminished the whites there. Excuse me. The poor are by this means deprived of employment. Remember, I told you about that before. They use the poor. They use the poor whites. While a few families acquire vast estates. I said all that before for a reason, because I wanted y'all to understand it. Which they spend on foreign luxuries and educating their children in the habit of those luxuries. How to control the people. How to control the poor. How to keep the Negro enslaved. They want the poor whites to keep on working, thinking that they can reach this status so they can continue to be rich and live their luxurious lives. The same income is needed for the support of one that might have maintained 100. The whites who have slaves not laboring are enfeebled and therefore not so generally prolific. The slaves being worked too hard and ill-fed, their constitutions are broken, and the deaths among them are more than the births, so that a continual supply is needed from Africa. They were being literally worked to the bone. That's where it comes from, worked to death. They come from slaves. They just kept on going back and getting more, a continuous supply. It was a business to them. It had nothing to do with Nothing to do with what people try to make it seem. Nothing. It was all business. Folks didn't give a dang about blacks. They didn't give a dang really about poor whites or who they considered poor whites. If you weren't part of the elite, then to hell with you. The northern colonies having few slaves increase in whites. So he's saying, like, look, they doing it right. Northern colonies included what? Pennsylvania. We got a few slaves, but guess what? We got more whites than we got slaves. He was afraid that the nation that he had set up for his people, for white supremacy, was going to be overrun by slaves and foreigners. Slaves also pejorate the families that use them. The white children become proud, disgusted with labor, and being educated in idleness, are rendered unfit to get a living by industry. So he said this. He said the slavery thing affects all of us because they wanted to raise up the white children to not be proud in idleness, but they wanted to raise them up in the ways of business, to make money, to have a system in place to make more money, to push forward and to take over the rest of the world. Now we want to jump down to 14. And it says, hence the prince that acquires new territory, if he finds it vacant, or removes the natives to give his own people room. Oh my God. The legislator that makes effectual laws for promoting of trade, increasing employment, improving land by more or better tillage, providing more food by fisheries, securing property and company and co. And the man that invents new trades, arts, or manufactures, or new improvements in husbandry, may be properly called fathers of their nation. So that's why he was considered one of the founding fathers. He was saying this is his teaching. This is what he believed. He said, when y'all do this, then you can be properly called fathers of your nation. He said, this is what I was about right here. I'm about finding vacant land or removing the natives on a piece of land that I want to give it to my own people. And then I'm going to make laws that promote trade to increase employment. Then I'm going to improve the land for better tillage and provide more food for fisheries. All this has to do with money. More money. More money. He says, may be properly called fathers of their nations, as they are the cause of the generation of multitudes, by the encouragement they afford to marriage. So he said he wanted to set this system up in place, the very system that we are in right now, set the system up in place so that his people, the pure whites, could afford to marry, so that his beliefs, his legacy, his spirit could continue to live on. Now, I know you keep on probably thinking like, what are you talking about, pure whites, white supremacy? What do you see that at? If you don't see it, then you will see it. If you don't see it yet. So now we jump down to 21. And it says, the importation of foreigners into a country that has as many inhabitants as the present employments and provisions of substance will bear, will be in the end no increase of people, unless the newcomers have more industry and frugality than the natives. And then they will provide more substance and increase in the country, but they will gradually eat the natives out. So he said that we need business so our people can have some work, so that they can get married and have children, so that we can increase. And then we can eventually push them out, push natives out. But by bringing them over here, bringing blacks over here, we're not helping our cause. Nor is it necessary to bring in foreigners to fill up any occasional vacancy in a country. For such vacancy, if the laws are good, will soon be filled by natural generation. Who can now find the vacancy made in Sweden, France, or other warlike nations by the plague of heroism 40 years ago in France, by the expulsion of the Protestants in England, by the settlement of her colonies, or in Guinea, by the 100 years exportation of slaves that has blackened half America. So he's saying that we don't need to do it this way. You're going against the very thing that I didn't want. He didn't want America to be black, even though America was already black, because natives were what we call black, the copper color races. The thinness of inhabitants in Spain is owing to national pride and idleness and other causes rather than to the expulsion of the Moors or to the making of new settlements. So he's saying that's not the cause that Spain is the way it is. It's because of your national pride and your laziness. They didn't want to work. They want the slaves to do all the work. So now we jump down to the bottom, and this is where you get to the nitty gritty, the good stuff. So he says, and since detachments of English from Britain sent to America will have their places at home so soon supplied and increase so largely here, why should the Palatine Boers be suffered to swarm into our settlements, and by herding together establish their language and manners to the exclusion of ours? Why should Pennsylvania, founded by the English, become a colony of aliens who will shortly be so numerous as to Germanize us instead of our Anglifying them, and will never adopt our language or customs any more than they can acquire our complexion? So why does he compare what he's saying to their complexion? He says that, they're not going to take on our ways just as much as we're not going to take on their ways by bringing them over here. He said what's going to end up happening is that they're going to be larger in number, and then they're going to change us instead of us changing them. See, that's what it was all about. They wanted to set America up as a white supremacist utopia, and then spread that and take over the rest of the world from there, with America being the central location. So 24. Now this is where it really gets the fruit of what I'm talking about in regards to the whole white supremacist stuff. So this is a continuation of what he just said, which leads me to add one remark, that the number of purely white people in the world is proportionally very small. You see, there's this lie that's being purported that non-whites are the minority, when that is not true. They push that because they have to keep up with the image of white supremacy. It's all mind games. Which leads me to add one remark, that the number of purely white people in the world is proportionally very small. All Africa is black or tawny. All Africa is black or tawny. Asia, chiefly tawny. Now, what is this word tawny? What is this word tawny? Tan colored. Of or like the brownish yellow of tan leather. Dark brown, tan. Think about when people, I'm finna get a tan. What are you finna do? You're finna darken your skin. So tan is what? Like dark brown. So he says what? That all Africa is either black, like dark skin, really dark skin, or tan, dark brown, which black is brown. There's no such thing as a black person. Black is a generic term that was Made up. I'm going to do a sermon on that too. Asia is chiefly what? Dark brown, tan. And listen to what else he says. America, exclusive of the newcomers. Wholly so. So America was what? Black and tawny. Minus the newcomers, it was black and tawny. And in Europe, the Spaniards, I want y'all to really listen to this. Listen to what he says, because this is not something that you're going to be taught in the history books or from majority of people. And in Europe, the Spaniards, Italians, French, Russians, and Swedes are generally of what we call a swarthy complexion, as are the Germans also. The Saxons only expected, who with the English make the principal body of white people on the face of the earth. I want to read that one more time. And in Europe, the Spaniards, Italians, French, Russians, and Swedes are generally of what we call a swarthy complexion, as are the Germans also. The Saxons only expected, who with the English make the principal body of white people on the face of the earth. So what is swarthy? Because he says that the Spaniard, he said in Europe, the Spaniards, the Italians, the French, the Russians, the Swedes, they are what are generally of a swarthy complexion, as are the Germans. See, you've been lied to in history. You think that these nations, they were what we call white at first. They were not. They were not. They were not. Now, what is swarthy? What is swarthy? Let me find my thing. Swarthy. Let's jump over here. Swarthy. Swarthy. Dark colored, especially of skin. Hold on now. Dark color. Dark color, especially of skin. You go on Google, you type in swarthy. Dark skinned, olive skinned, black, dark skin, olive skin, black. So swarthy means dark skin. That's what we would call black. So if we go back, he says again, and in Europe, the Spaniards, Italians, French, Russians, what's Russia primary today? That's because they migrated there. And Swedes are generally of what we call a swarthy complexion. They were dark skinned, as are the Germans also. The Germans were dark skinned? The Saxons only accepted, so only them. He considered only them white. Who with the English, these two, only them what? Make the principal body of white people on the face of the earth. I could wish their numbers were increased. Who he considers the white people. And while we are, as I may call it, scouring our planet. They scouring our planet. They call themselves cleaning the planet. Ridding the planet of what? These swarthy complexion and black and tawny people. With the central location being in America. Hitler tried it. By clearing America of woods. Because why? The Indians, they were hunters. So if you clear the area of woods, then it's going to run all the animals off. And then they can't hunt because they want to industrialize it. The very thing we have today. And so making this side of our globe reflect a brighter light to the eyes of inhabitants in Mars or Venus. He worshiped the gods. I want to read that one more time. And while we are, as I may call it, scouring our planet, by clearing America of woods, and so making this side of our globe reflect a brighter light to the eyes of inhabitants in Mars or Venus. Why should we, in the sight of superior beings, these inhabitants of Mars and Venus, the fallen angels, darken its people? So his people, who he believes these superior beings, he believes that the gods are white. They're not dark. They're not black. What we call black. That's where you get to I forgot the name of that group of they call the fallen angels. So they like real white. Why increase the sons of Africa by planting them in America? See, he did not want the slaves over here, where we have so fair an opportunity by excluding all blacks and tawnies, of increasing the lovely white and red. But perhaps I am partial to the complexion of my country, for such kind of partiality is natural to mankind. Now he spoke some truth there, because people are partial to their flesh. He spoke some truth, but he worshipped the fallen. He worshipped fallen angels, who he thought, in his mind, they were they looked like him. So if he thought that, and that he was superior to the rest of these people, sons of Ham, the blacks and the tawnies, brown people, because they're one and the same, then what does that tell you? What does that tell you? So let's go forward again. Tawny, we see what? Tan colored, brown, dark brown. Tawny, also called teeny, I probably pronouncing it wrong, is a light brown or brownish orange color. That's a tawny owl. Why? Because it's light brown, or it's like a brownish orange. It's everything to do with complexion. The word means tan colored, associated with the brownish yellow of tan leather. So they associated the skin color with the color of leather. We all do. We associate something with something else to describe something. Crushed oak bark used in tanning leather, probably from a Celtic or Celtic source. So that shows you right there. So when we look up tawny skin, we see this. Let's click on this image. You see it says tawny gold. It's giving you a comparison of different hair colors. Warm platinum, white platinum hair, tawny gold hair. What color is that? It's like a brown, right? It almost matches her skin color, almost matches her dress. Let's see if we can find some more. There's another image right there. It gives you different shades of brown. Tawny right there. They say that's tawny. They say that's ginger. Tawny, amber and tan, tan and sand, sand and sable, chestnut and hazelnut, hazelnut and carob, carob and Sophia, I don't know. Tawny. Let's click on this one to see what it says. I don't think it says anything. No, it's an article. Here we go. Dark yellow tawny skin. So it shows you the different undertones of tawny skin. You got golden undertone. Right there it says dark tan. It has like a little yellow tint to it, right? What we call light skin folks. You got different shades. This one has a golden undertone, red undertone, and a green undertone. But still what? It's still tawny. So when he says tawny, that's what he's talking about. Let's continue forward. There goes another one. Makeup, tawny, It's brown. Now I found this interesting because it says, this is Kylie Jenner. What I wish I looked like all the time. So what is she telling you? She's telling you that she would look black or tanned or tawny. Or you say you need more evidence. Okay. Look at her before and after. Now we know she has some work and stuff, but look at her skin complexion. Look at her skin complexion. So when she says this, what I wish I looked like all the time, she really means it. She's not happy with who she was made to be either. That's how Satan works. And black people, they hate their skin too. A lot of black people hate their skin. She wants to be black. She wants to be taught. She doesn't want to be this. That's why her boyfriend is black. Because it's representing who she wants to have a baby by and what she wants to be. Go another picture. Look how darker she is compared to how she was born. So we go back to swarthy, dark skinned, olive skinned. So what color are olives? Because people will say, well, Jesus was olive colored. The reason they say that Jesus was olive colored because they don't want to accept the fact of that Jesus was a man of color, what we call a man of color, a black man. Because technically they're saying that he was black by saying that he was olive colored. But they don't want to say it, so they manipulate words. I'm going to prove that to you. There are no green olive trees. The color of an olive is an indication of its ripeness. Green olives ripen and become black olives, or rather, they transform from green to light brown to a vibrant red and purple to the deepest, darkest black. So, which one was it? If Jesus was olive colored, was he green? Was he red like that? Was he purple? Or most likely what was he? Light brown or black? The color of the olive corresponds to how ripe they are when picked, in addition to the curing process they undergo. Green olives are picked before ripening. So they're not even ripe. They pick them before they're ripe because they know that if you pick something when it's ripe, then you can't do nothing with it because you got to send it around the world and all this other stuff. Then about the time it get there, it's going to be spoiled. You pick something right before it's ripe. So when it comes off, you know what I'm saying, it can have time to ripen. It can be at its full flavor, and you can eat it. Green olives are picked before ripening, and black olives are picked while ripe, which is when the color has turned from green to black. So you either pick it right before it's ripe, or you pick it right when it's ripe. So you can do something with it. So how is all this tied together with the agenda for white supremacy? Well, we go on Google and we find a few interesting articles. Fewer birth rates than deaths among whites in majority of U.S. states. That's the New York Times. The U.S. will become minority white in 2045. The U.S. is already, whites are already a minority. While white Americans are dying faster than they are being born, and it continues to go on. Declining white population is spawning fears. This is what Benjamin Franklin was afraid of. That his pure race of white supremacy was going to be a minority and then eventually be non-existent. That's what he was afraid of. Now, I'm going to close with a few more scriptures. Let me look it up real quick. Y'all give me a second. We're gonna go to Matthew. Yeah, Matthew 13. It talks about the wheat and the tares. So he gives us the understanding of the wheat and the tares, right? He gives a parable of it, then he gives us the understanding. We want to go to the understanding. Matthew 13, verse 37. He answered and said unto them, He that soweth the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world. The good seed are the children of the kingdom, but the tares are the children of the wicked one. The enemy that sowed them sowed who? Sowed the tares is the devil. The harvest is the end of the world, and the reapers are the angels. As therefore the tares are gathered and burned in the fire, so shall it be in the end of the world. The Son of Man shall send forth his angels, and they shall gather out of his kingdom all things that offend, and them that which do iniquity, and shall cast them into a and shall cast them into a furnace of fire. There shall be wailing and gnashing of teeth. So, if a person is talking about that they come from this pure white race, then most likely they are tares. They are tares because there's no such thing as a pure white race. Because the original mankind is what we call black. The original mankind is what we call black. And majority of you that think that you're white, you're not. White is a made-up term. White ultimately refers to the white supremacists. They don't care nothing about you. You got one drop of Negro blood, according to them, then you're considered a Negro. You're considered black. You're considered a non-white, colored. But the original people were people of color, which gave way to the different shades of people that we have. So they're using you because they know that this war is going on. They know who they are. They know who they are. Benjamin Franklin was a tare, planted here, sold here by the devil. That's why he promotes that. But you also have tares that are here in what we call black flesh, promoting the same thing. Black superiority and stuff like that. Fruit from the same tree, leading people to the same destination, the Luciferian doctrine. Because ultimately, Satan ain't going to be studying no black supremacy or white supremacy. He's going to be studying his supremacy because he's going to be ruling as king during that time. And God is going to allow it. You think he really going to be caring? Stop it. He's not going to care. He's going to do what you want to. As long as you worship me as God. So, yeah, I think that's it. Interesting sermon, I hope. Interesting sermon. God bless each and every one of you in Jesus Christ's name. As always, stay focused for Jesus. And as you know, truth is not debated, it is declared. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. If it was edifying to you, be sure to do your part and share it on all your social media outlets, websites, and forums. Your help is greatly appreciated to help fight this war and reach lost souls. Don't forget to like, dislike, and/or subscribe. Be sure to also check out our website, stayingfocusedforjesus.life. And make sure you check out that resource section, which has a lot of videos that I share and some other stuff. Books, documents, PDF, websites, many things, and it's growing daily as I add to it. Also follow us on Facebook for even more content. Staying Focused for Jesus on Facebook.
Squeeze it so tight, get the last drop, till there's nothing left, until we pass out. Keeping us around to clean up the mess and take the garbage out, but we'll be trash next. Create catastrophes to speed up the process. Depopulation, agenda progress. News tell half-truths, hidden in plain sight. They know with it Kool-Aid, but gave us cyanide. They know we don't see it. They know you can't see it. What they've done to us. Open your eyes. Lemonade. Don't drink the Kool-Aid, it ain't safe for us. They made it so sweetly, so it will be easy to carry their plans out to lemonade. Lemonade. Don't drink the Kool-Aid, it ain't safe for us. Made it too easy while we're busy sleeping. They carry their plans out to lemonade. Voluntarily, they hold us hostage. Pay to receive fabricated knowledge. False education, standing ovation for my degree in indoctrination. Georgia Guidestones plainly tell us that they plan to eliminate us. Conspiracy theory, we see no dilemma as they quietly wipe out billions. They know we don't see it. They know you can't see it. They know what they done to us, taking us down. Lemonade. Don't drink the Kool-Aid, it ain't safe for us. They made it so sweetly, so it will be easy to carry their plans out to lemonade. Lemonade. Don't drink the Kool-Aid, it ain't safe for us. Made it too easy while we're busy sleeping. They carry their plans out to lemonade. Invisible ones behind the scenes, like Geppetto, pulling the strings. Master plan, dumb us all down. Eat what they feed us, try not to think. Carry on, nothing to see as they continue with their killing spree. We wasting time on trivial things and buy what they sell.